The hospital copier hums to life at 2:47 a.m., its green light casting eerie shadows across the empty radiology department. Sheet after sheet feeds through the machine X-ray images of a woman's fractured ribs. Dated March 15, 1993, but Dr. Sarah Chun has been missing for 31 years. Dr. Marcus Webb freezes in the doorway of Mercy General's imaging center, his coffee cup trembling in his grip. The machine shouldn't be running. Hell, it shouldn't even be plugged in. This ancient Xerox model was scheduled for disposal last month. Yet here it stands, methodically reproducing medical files that predate the hospital's digital conversion by decades. Marcus sets his coffee on the nearest counter, his hands suddenly unsteady. The X-rays emerging from the copier show clear signs of trauma, multiple rib fractures in various stages of healing, a pattern he recognizes from his years treating domestic violence cases. But it's the patient information header that makes his blood run cold. Chun, Sarah L., staff physician, Dob, the 12th of April 1961. He reaches for the latest print, still warm from the machine. The film quality is poor, as if copied from a copy, but the timestamp is unmistakable. March 15, 1993, 11:43 p.m., the same date Dr. Sarah Chun walked out of this very hospital and vanished without a trace. The copier suddenly stops, its mechanical whirring fading to silence. In the quiet that follows, Marcus becomes acutely aware of his own breathing, the distant hum of the hospital's ventilation system, and something else, footsteps echoing from the corridor outside. Marcus has worked the night shift at Mercy General for 8 years, but he's never experienced anything like this. The rational part of his mind searches for explanations. A delayed timer, some kind of electrical malfunction, maybe even an elaborate prank by the day shift staff. But as he stares at the stack of X-rays in his hands, logic feels increasingly fragile. He remembers the stories whispered in the break room about Dr. Chien's disappearance, how she'd been working late that March night, reviewing patient files in this same department, how security footage showed her leaving through the main entrance at 11:51 p.m., 8 minutes after these X-rays were allegedly taken, how she'd never made it to her car in the parking lot, her keys found scattered beside the driver's door. The footsteps in the corridor grow louder, more deliberate. Marcus considers calling security, but what would he tell them? That a decades-old copier had spontaneously decided to reproduce evidence from a cold case? That he's standing in a room full of medical imaging that shouldn't exist? Instead, he gathers the X-rays and moves toward the door, peering into the hallway. The fluorescent lights flicker intermittently, creating a strobe effect that makes the empty corridor feel alive with movement. At the far end, near the elevator bank, he glimpses a figure in scrubs disappearing around the corner. "Hello?" Marcus calls out, his voice echoing off the walls. No response. He looks back at the copier, now dark and silent, as if it had never been running at all. The counter where he'd set his coffee is empty, the cup nowhere to be seen. But the X-rays remain in his hands, solid proof that something unexplainable has occurred. Marcus flips through the images, noting details that become more disturbing with each frame. The fractures aren't just random injuries, they form a pattern, as if inflicted systematically over time. Some show old breaks that had healed improperly, suggesting a history of abuse that extended far beyond the March 1993 incident. But it's the final X-ray in the stack that stops him cold. Unlike the others, this one shows a clear view of the patient's chest cavity. Embedded between the ribs, barely visible against the bone structure, is a small metallic object. Marcus squints at the image, trying to make sense of what he's seeing. It looks like a key. A chill runs down his spine as he remembers another detail from the Chen case, how her apartment keys were found in the parking lot, but her locker key had never been recovered. Hospital security had assumed she'd taken it with her, wherever she'd gone. But if this X-ray is authentic, if it really shows Sarah Chun's final moments. The elevator at the end of the hall chimes softly, its doors sliding open. Marcus expects to see the figure in scrubs, maybe a late shift nurse or another resident making rounds. Instead, the elevator is empty, its interior light casting a pale rectangle of illumination into the darkened corridor. Marcus clutches the X-rays tighter and starts walking toward the elevator, each step echoing in the silence. As he draws closer, he notices something that makes him stop abruptly. There, on the elevator floor, is a small piece of paper. Even from a distance, he can see it's a hospital ID badge. His heart pounds as he approaches, afraid of what he might find, but unable to turn away. The badge lies face up, its laminated surface reflecting the fluorescent lights. The photo shows a young Asian woman with kind eyes and a professional smile. The name beneath reads, Dr. Sarah Chun, Radiology Department. The elevator doors begin to close. Marcus lunges forward, his hand shooting out to catch the elevator doors just before they seal shut. The rubber safety edge bounces against his palm, and the doors reluctantly slide open again. He steps inside, the X-rays still clutched in his other hand, and bends down to retrieve the ID badge. The plastic is cold to the touch, but more unsettling is its condition pristine, as if it had been printed yesterday rather than 3 decades ago. Marcus turns it over in his fingers, noting the magnetic stripe on the back, still black and unblemished. Hospital protocol required staff to surrender their badges upon termination, or, in Dr. Chen's case, when declared missing. This badge should have been deactivated and destroyed years ago. The elevator remains motionless, waiting for him to select a floor. Marcus stares at the button panel, his mind racing. The logical choice would be the security office on the ground floor, but something pulls his attention to a button he's never noticed before. B2, marked with faded lettering that reads, Archive Storage. Mercy General has a basement level for mechanical systems and general storage, but Marcus has never heard of a sub-basement. The button appears older than the others, its plastic yellowed with age and wear patterns suggesting frequent use despite its obscure location. Before he can second-guess himself, Marcus presses B2. The elevator lurches downward with a mechanical groan that seems to come from the building's very bones. The descent takes longer than expected, and Marcus begins to wonder if he's made a terrible mistake. The digital floor indicator flickers erratically, showing numbers that don't correspond to any floor plan he knows. B1, B1.5, B2. When the doors finally open, Marcus finds himself facing a corridor that predates the hospital's recent renovations. The walls are painted institutional green, chipped and stained with decades of neglect. Bare bulbs hang from the ceiling at irregular intervals, casting harsh shadows that seem to move independently of their light sources. The air smells of old paper and something else, a faint chemical odor that reminds Marcus of developing solution used in traditional photography. As he steps into the corridor, motion sensor lights flicker on ahead of him, revealing a path that stretches into darkness. Room numbers line the walls: B2001, B2002, B2003. Most doors are locked, their frosted glass windows dark and impenetrable. But as Marcus walks deeper into the sub-basement, he notices that one room at the end of the hall glows with a soft amber light. The nameplate beside the door reads, Dr. S. Chen, Personal Archive. Marcus's pulse quickens. According to hospital records, Dr. Chun's office had been on the 3rd floor of the main building, nowhere near this forgotten basement level. Yet here stands a room bearing her name, apparently untouched by time and renovation. He tries the door handle, expecting it to be locked, but it turns easily under his grip. The door swings open to reveal a space frozen in 1993 wood-paneled walls, a heavy oak desk, and filing cabinets that predate the hospital's computerized record system. But it's the wall display that captures Marcus's attention. Dozens of X-rays hang on light boxes, their ghostly images creating a gallery of human suffering. The films show various patients, all with similar patterns of systematic trauma broken. Bones in different stages of healing, consistent with long-term abuse. Marcus approaches the display, his medical training automatically cataloging the injuries. Fractured orbital bones, broken ribs, compressed vertebrae, each image tells a story of violence and pain. But as he examines them more closely, he realizes something that makes his stomach clench. All the X-rays bear the same timestamp, March 15, 1993. Between 10:30 and 11:43 p.m., the same night Dr. Chen disappeared. A manila folder lies open on the desk, its contents spilled across the surface. Marcus sees patient intake forms, hospital incident reports, and what appears to be a personal journal written in neat, precise handwriting. He picks up the top page, recognizing it as Dr. Chun's writing from the signature at the bottom. March 15, 1993 to 9:15 p.m., the entry begins. I've confirmed my suspicions about the abuse cases. The pattern is too consistent to be coincidental. Someone with access to patient records is selecting victims, using their medical information to identify vulnerable targets. The radiological evidence is overwhelming. Marcus continues reading, his hands growing cold as the implications become clear. Dr. Chun hadn't simply been reviewing routine patient files that night. She'd been conducting her own investigation into what appeared to be a systematic targeting of abuse victims. I've identified at least 12 cases over the past 6 months, the journal continues. All patients treated for domestic violence injuries, all subsequently reported missing or found deceased under suspicious circumstances. The connection is the hospital itself. Someone with administrative access is using our patient database as a hunting ground. The entry becomes more urgent as it progresses. I've tried to bring this to Administrator Harrison's attention, but he dismisses my concerns as paranoid speculation. He claims the correlation is coincidental, that I'm seeing patterns where none exist. But I have proof, radiological evidence that someone has been monitoring these patients' treatment schedules, their home addresses, their vulnerable moments. Marcus flips to the next page, his heart pounding as he reads Dr. Chun's final documented thoughts. I'm staying late tonight to copy the evidence. If something happens to me, if I don't make it home, the truth is in these X-rays. Someone needs to know that predators walk these halls, hiding behind medical credentials and administrative authority. The journal entry ends abruptly, followed by several blank pages. But paper clipped to the back cover is a list of names patients whose X-rays hang on the wall around him. Next to each name is a date, and beside that, a chilling notation, status missing or status deceased. Marcus counts the names. 12, exactly as Dr. Chun had written. A soft sound from the corridor makes him freeze, the whisper of fabric against wall, as if someone is moving carefully through the darkness outside. Marcus switches off the desk lamp, plunging the room into the dim glow of the X-ray light boxes. Through the frosted glass of the door, he sees a shadow pass by, then return, lingering just outside. The shadow appears to be examining the nameplate, perhaps reading Dr. Chun's name just as Marcus had done moments before. Marcus holds his breath, clutching the journal and X-rays against his chest. The shadow moves again, and he hears the soft click of a door handle being tested. Not his door, one of the others in the corridor. Then another click, and another. Someone is systematically checking every door in the archive level, moving methodically toward Dr. Chin's office. Marcus realizes with growing dread that whoever is out there will eventually reach his hiding place. And given the nature of what he's discovered, he doubts the approaching visitor has innocent intentions. The footsteps pause directly outside his door. The door handle turns slowly, metal grinding against metal in the silence. Marcus presses himself against the wall beside the filing cabinets, his breathing shallow and controlled. The X-ray light boxes cast eerie shadows across the room, but they also provide just enough illumination to reveal his position to anyone entering. The door creaks open, inch by inch. A figure steps into the doorway, tall, wearing dark clothing. Face obscured by the corridor's poor lighting. Marcus catches a glimpse of latex gloves and feels his blood turn to ice. No one wears surgical gloves to conduct innocent business in a basement archive. The intruder pauses, scanning the room methodically. Marcus can hear their controlled breathing, the soft squeak of rubber solace against linoleum. Professional. Practiced. This isn't someone who stumbled upon the archive by accident. Marcus grips Dr. Chun's journal tighter, acutely aware that he's holding evidence of a conspiracy that cost at least 13 lives. The realization hits him like a physical blow. He's not just a witness anymore. He's a threat. The figure moves deeper into the room, approaching the desk where Marcus had been reading moments before. In the amber glow of the light boxes, Marcus catches sight of the intruder's profile, and his heart nearly stops. The face is older now, lined with 31 years of careful living, but unmistakably familiar from the hospital's administrative directory. Administrator Philip Harrison. The same man Dr. Chun had mentioned in her journal, the one who had dismissed her concerns as paranoid speculation. Harrison examines the desk surface, noting the disturbed papers and open folders. His movements are precise, economical, the behavior of someone who has done this before. He reaches into his jacket and withdraws a small digital camera, methodically, photographing the journal pages and patient files. Marcus realizes with growing horror that Harrison isn't here to cover up the evidence. He's documenting what remains, possibly to determine how much Dr. Chen had discovered before her disappearance, which means he knows exactly what happened to her. Harrison moves to the X-ray display, studying each image with clinical detachment. He removes several films from their clips, rolling them carefully and sliding them into a protective tube. The selection appears random, but Marcus notices that Harrison is specifically choosing X-rays that show the most severe trauma patterns. A soft chime echoes through the basement, the elevator arriving at B2. Harrison freezes, his head tilting toward the door. More footsteps in the corridor, these heavier and less cautious than Harrison's calculated approach. "Phil," a gruff voice calls from somewhere in the archive level. "You down here?" Harrison moves swiftly to the door, peering into the corridor. "Room B2015, he responds quietly. "Found what we were looking for." Marcus's mind races. Harrison isn't working alone. The conspiracy Dr. Chun uncovered 31 years ago is still active, still claiming victims. And now Marcus has walked directly into their web. The newcomer's footsteps approach, accompanied by the metallic rattle of equipment. Through the gap in the door, Marcus sees a second figure join Harrison, a man in hospital maintenance coveralls, carrying what appears to be industrial cleaning supplies. "Same drill as before?" the maintenance worker asks, his voice casual, as if they're discussing routine hospital business. "Standard protocol," Harrison confirms. "Complete sanitization of the space. We'll relocate the useful materials to the off-site facility." Marcus feels sick as the implications become clear. They've done this before discovered evidence of Dr. Chen's investigation, cleaned up the traces, moved anything valuable to a location beyond the hospital's official records. The archive room isn't a memorial to Dr. Chun's work. It's a storage facility that Harrison has been monitoring for 3 decades. But why leave the evidence here at all? Why not destroy it immediately after her disappearance? The answer comes to Marcus with chilling clarity, because they're still using it. Dr. Chun's research, her identification of vulnerable patients, her mapping of abuse patterns, it's all still valuable to whoever has been continuing her killers' work. Harrison steps back into the room, and Marcus realizes his hiding spot behind the filing cabinets won't remain concealed much longer. The maintenance worker follows, wheeling in a cart loaded with bleach, industrial cleaners, and what looks like a portable document shredder. "Start with the hard copies," Harrison instructs. "I want every piece of paper processed before we move." "To digital cleanup." The worker nods and begins feeding documents into the shredder. The machine's mechanical whirring fills the room, but to Marcus, it sounds like a countdown. Once they finish destroying the evidence, they'll conduct a thorough sweep of the space. Discovery is inevitable. Marcus studies the room desperately, searching for escape options. The door is blocked. There are no windows in the basement level. But his eyes settle on something he hadn't noticed before: a second door, partially hidden behind one of the X-ray display panels. It's smaller than the main entrance, possibly a service access or emergency exit. The maintenance worker moves closer to Marcus's position, the shredder's cord stretched to its limit. Marcus can smell the man's cigarette-stained clothing, hear his labored breathing. In moments, the worker will need to move the machine closer to the filing cabinets, and Marcus's concealment will be blown. Harrison has his back turned, still examining the X-ray display and making notes on a tablet. The maintenance worker is focused on feeding papers into the shredder, his attention completely absorbed by the task. Marcus makes his decision. He slides along the wall toward the hidden door, moving inch by careful inch. The floor creaks slightly under his weight, but the shredder's noise masks the sound. His hand reaches the door handle, an old-fashioned lever that might be locked or might lead nowhere. The handle turns. Cool air rushes through the crack, carrying the scent of the hospital's upper levels. This isn't just a service closet, it's a passage that leads back to the main building. Marcus eases the door open wider, preparing to slip through. Behind him, the shredder suddenly stops. "Phil," the maintenance worker says, his voice sharp with concern, "we've got a problem." Marcus freezes, certain he's been discovered. But when he glances back, he sees the worker holding up a piece of paper, not Dr. Chun's journal, but something else entirely. "This was clipped to the back of one of the patient files," the worker continues. "Looks like a copy of tonight's security log. Someone was in the radiology department at 2:47 a.m., accessed the basement levels at 3:12 a.m. Harrison snatches the paper, his face darkening as he reads. "Dr. Marcus Webb, night shift resident. Authorized access to all hospital levels." He looks up, his eyes scanning the room with new intensity. He's here, somewhere in this building. The maintenance worker reaches into his coveralls and withdraws what Marcus recognizes as a hospital security radio. "Should I call it in?" "Have security locked down the building?" Harrison shakes his head. "No official channels. This stays between us." He moves toward the main door, his movements suddenly predatory. Webb couldn't have gotten far. "And he has something that belongs to us." As their footsteps fade into the corridor, Marcus realizes with dawning horror that his ID badge had been automatically logging his movements throughout the night. Every door he'd accessed, every floor he'd visited, all of it recorded in the hospital security system. They know exactly where he's been, and they're coming for him. Marcus slips through the hidden doorway into a narrow service corridor that runs parallel to the hospital's main infrastructure. Pipes and electrical conduits line the walls, creating a mechanical maze that spans the building's entire footprint. Emergency lighting strips provide minimal illumination, casting everything in a sickly green glow. He moves as quietly as possible, Dr. Chun's journal and X-rays still clutched against his chest. The service passage slopes upward, suggesting it connects the basement levels to the upper floors through a network of maintenance access points. But as Marcus navigates the cramped space, he becomes increasingly aware that his escape route might also be a trap. The hospital security system isn't just tracking his badge, it's creating a digital trail that Harrison can follow in real time. Every door Marcus opens, every corridor he enters, generates an electronic breadcrumb that leads directly to his current position. Marcus stops at a junction where the service corridor branches in 3 directions. Mounted on the wall is an emergency communication panel. Its red phone designed for maintenance workers to contact security or administration. But beside it, almost hidden behind a bundle of cables, is something that makes Marcus's blood run cold. A small digital display showing real-time security alerts. Level 5 Alert. Dr. Marcus W.E.B. Unauthorized access to restricted areas, the screen reads. Notify Admin Harrison immediately. Do not engage. The timestamp shows the alert was issued 4 minutes ago. Harrison isn't just tracking Marcus. Through the security system, he's actively monitoring it, using administrative privileges to turn the entire hospital into a surveillance network. But it's the final line of the alert that terrifies Marcus most. Subject armed and dangerous extreme. Caution advised. He's never touched a weapon in his life. The false characterization can only mean one thing. Harrison is preparing to justify whatever happens next. If Marcus is found dead in the hospital, it will be explained as a tragic confrontation with an unstable resident who had suffered a psychological break. Marcus forces himself to think clearly. He needs to get out of the building, but simply running won't solve the larger problem. Somewhere in the hospital, Harrison and his network are continuing Dr. Chin's killer's work, targeting vulnerable patients with the same systematic precision that claimed 13 lives 31 years ago. The evidence in Marcus's hands might be the only proof that the conspiracy exists. If he doesn't find a way to expose it, more people will die. Marcus chooses the middle corridor, reasoning that it will lead toward the hospital's central core, rather than the perimeter exits Harrison will likely be monitoring. As he moves through the service passage, he begins to notice details that suggest this hidden infrastructure has been modified over the years. Security cameras have been installed. At irregular intervals, their lenses pointed not at potential break-in routes, but at the access points themselves. Someone has been watching who uses these passages, documenting the movements of maintenance workers and anyone else who discovers the hidden network. More disturbing are the additional communication panels Marcus encounters far more than necessary for routine maintenance operations. Each panel includes not just the standard emergency phone, but also computer terminals connected to the hospital's main database. Someone could access patient records, scheduling information, and personal data from anywhere in the building without leaving a trace in the official system logs. Marcus realizes he's discovered the infrastructure that enables Harrison's operation. The service corridors aren't just maintenance access, they're a parallel command structure that allows complete surveillance and control of the hospital's vulnerable populations. At the next junction, Marcus finds a terminal that's still active. Its screen displaying a patient database query. Someone has been searching recent admissions for specific criteria: patients admitted for trauma injuries, those without strong family support networks, individuals with histories of domestic violence or addiction. The search results show 12 current patients who match the profile. 12 people who, according to Dr. Chun's research, represent the ideal targets for whatever Harrison and his associates are planning. Marcus recognizes several names from his own patient rounds. Maria Santos, a young mother admitted after a suspicious fall downstairs. Robert Kim, an elderly man whose accidental injuries raised red flags among the nursing staff. Jennifer Walsh, a college student, whose boyfriend had been arrested for assault but released on bail. All of them are scheduled for discharge within the next 48 hours. All of them live alone or in unstable housing situations. All of them have been marked in the database with a small notation that Marcus has never seen before. Priority. Monitoring required. The terminal includes a messaging system, and Marcus scrolls through recent communications with growing horror. The messages are coded, but their meaning becomes clear when cross-referenced with patient information. Package 7 ready for delivery Tuesday a.m. Confirm drop-off coordinates for packages 3 and 11. Client requests priority processing for package 9. Premium compensation approved. They're not just monitoring vulnerable patients, they're trafficking them. The hospital itself has become a harvesting ground, using medical records and treatment schedules to identify and acquire targets for sale to the highest bidder. Marcus photographs the screen with his phone, documenting as much evidence as possible before the system logs him out. But as he works, he becomes aware of new sounds echoing through the service corridors, multiple sets of footsteps, coordinated movement, the crackle of radio communications. Harrison has mobilized additional personnel. The manhunt is expanding. Marcus quickly closes the terminal and continues deeper into the service network, but the corridors are becoming more populated. He passes several access points where he can hear voices on the other side, maintenance workers being questioned, security guards receiving updated instructions, administrators coordinating search patterns. Webb's still in the building, a voice reports through a nearby wall. Badge activity shows he accessed the south service corridor 12 minutes ago, sealing all perimeter exits now. Marcus realizes the net is closing. Harrison isn't just tracking his current position, he's anticipating Marcus's movements, using the hospital's layout and security protocols to funnel him toward a predetermined capture point. But as Marcus approaches what appears to be another dead end, he notices something that gives him hope. A maintenance ladder leading upward, marked with faded stenciling that reads, "Roof access, emergency only." The hospital's roof would provide multiple escape routes, fire escapes, HVAC maintenance platforms, possibly even access to adjacent buildings. More importantly, the roof is likely outside Harrison's immediate surveillance network. Marcus begins climbing. The metal runs cold against his palms. The ladder shaft is narrow and claustrophobic, but after what feels like an eternity, he reaches a heavy metal door marked with emergency exit warnings. He pushes the door open and emerges onto the hospital's roof, gasping as cold night air fills his lungs. The city spreads out below him, its lights twinkling in the pre-dawn darkness. For the first time since discovering the mysterious X-rays, Marcus feels like he might actually escape. But as he steps onto the roof, motion sensor floodlights blaze to life, illuminating him like a spotlight on a stage. Below, radio chatter erupts from multiple locations as security personnel confirm visual contact. Harrison's voice cuts through the noise, transmitted from somewhere inside the building. All units, target is on the roof. Maintain perimeter positions. He has nowhere left to run. Marcus looks around desperately, searching for escape routes. But Harrison is right. The hospital stands isolated from neighboring buildings, its roof accessible only through the ladder he's just climbed. The fire escapes lead down to ground level, where Harrison's people are waiting. But as Marcus surveys his options, his eyes settle on something that offers a glimmer of hope. A construction crane positioned next to the hospital's east wing, part of the ongoing renovation project. The crane's boom extends across the roof, and its operator's cab sits only 20 feet away. Marcus has never operated construction equipment, but he's desperate. If he can reach the crane and figure out its controls, he might be able to swing the boom toward the parking structure across the street. As footsteps echo from the roof access door behind him, Marcus runs toward the crane, Dr. Chun's evidence still clutched against his chest. Behind him, the door bursts open, and Harrison's voice echoes across the rooftop. "Dr. Webb, there's no need for this to end badly. We can work something out." Marcus reaches the crane's base and begins climbing the steel ladder toward the operators cab, his hands numb from cold and adrenaline. The journal and x-rays are tucked inside his jacket, pressed against his ribs like armor made of paper and terrible knowledge. "Marcus!" Harrison's voice carries across the rooftop, no longer the polished administrator, but something harder, more desperate. "You don't understand what you're interfering with. This is bigger than one hospital. bigger than you can imagine. Marcus doesn't look back, focusing on each rung as he climbs higher. The wind picks up, threatening to tear him from the ladder, but he pushes upward toward the cab. Behind him, he hears multiple sets of footsteps spreading across the roof. Harrison isn't alone anymore. "We know about your student loans," Harrison continues, his tone shifting to something almost conversational. "180,000. In debt, isn't it? Your father's medical bills from the cancer treatment? We can make all of that disappear, Marcus. One conversation, and your life becomes considerably easier." The words hit harder than Marcus expects. His father's death 3 years ago had left him drowning in inherited medical debt, working double shifts just to keep his head above water. For a moment, Harrison's offer feels like salvation. But then Marcus remembers the faces in Dr. Chun's patient files. Maria Santos's bruised cheekbones. Robert Kim's fearful eyes during examination. These aren't numbers in a ledger, they're people whose pain has been weaponized for profit. Marcus reaches the operator's cab and fumbles with the door, his fingers stiff with cold. The lock is industrial grade, designed to prevent theft of expensive equipment, but desperation gives him strength. He braces his feet against the ladder and pulls, feeling something give way in the mechanism. The door swings open, and Marcus tumbles into the cab just as Harrison and 3 other figures reach the base of the crane. In the harsh floodlight glare, Marcus recognizes the maintenance worker from the basement, plus 2 men in security uniforms he's never seen before, not hospital staff, but private contractors with the professional bearing of ex-military. "Cut the power to the crane," Harrison orders. "He can't operate it without electricity." Marcus frantically examines the control panel, grateful for the hours he'd spent as a teenager, helping his uncle's construction crew during summer breaks. The controls are more complex than the equipment he remembers, but the basic principles remain the same: hydraulic pressure, boom extension, rotation controls. Most importantly, the crane appears to be diesel-powered rather than connected to the building's electrical grid. Harrison's order to cut power won't stop the machine, but it might disable the work lights that currently illuminate the construction site. Marcus finds the ignition sequence and fires up the diesel engine. The crane shudders to life with a deep mechanical rumble that drowns out Harrison's shouted commands. Through the cab's windows, Marcus sees the security contractors beginning their own climb up the ladder, moving with trained efficiency. The boom controls respond sluggishly, but Marcus manages to rotate the crane arm toward the parking structure across the street. The distance looks manageable, maybe 60 feet, but the gap yawns like an abyss in the darkness below. "You're going to get yourself killed," Harrison shouts over the engine noise. "Even if you reach the other building, you think you can hide forever? We have resources you can't imagine. Connections in law enforcement, city government, the medical establishment. You're one man with some old papers against a network that's been operating successfully for 3 decades. The words carry the weight of truth. Marcus realizes that even if he escapes the hospital, exposing Harrison's conspiracy will require more than Dr. Chun's evidence. He needs allies, people with the authority and credibility to make the accusations stick. But first, he has to survive the next 10 minutes. The first security contractor reaches the cab level, and Marcus sees a flash of metal in the man's hand, not a gun, but something that looks like a modified taser. They want him alive, which suggests they still hope to contain the situation quietly. Marcus extends the boom as far as it will go, then activates the hoist mechanism. The steel cable unspools rapidly, its hook swinging toward the parking structure like a pendulum. The timing will have to be perfect. Jump too early, and he'll fall short. Too late, and the contractors will have him. The cab door rattles as the first contractor tries to force it open. Marcus has maybe 30 seconds before they breach his temporary sanctuary. Through his phone, Marcus quickly accesses his email and begins forwarding the photos he'd taken in the basement, to everyone in his contact list: fellow residents, medical school friends, his brother in Seattle. Most of the messages will probably be dismissed as spam or a psychological breakdown, but someone might take them seriously enough to investigate. The cab door buckles inward. The second contractor has joined the first, and they're using tools to pry open the entrance. Marcus can see the maintenance worker climbing toward them, carrying what appears to be an acetylene torch. Marcus grabs the cable controls and begins reeling himself toward the parking structure. The boom sways under his weight, its mechanical joints groaning in protest. Below, the street looks impossibly far away, dotted with the headlights of early morning traffic. Last chance, Marcus. Harrison's voice carries clearly in the night air. Whatever you think you know, it's incomplete. Dr. Chun's investigation barely scratched the surface. The real operation is something you can't even comprehend. The words plant a seed of doubt in Marcus's mind. What if Dr. Chun's evidence is just one piece of a much larger puzzle? What if destroying Harrison's local network won't actually save anyone? But as Marcus swings through the air toward the parking structure, clutching the cable with one hand and Dr. Chun's journal with the other, he makes a decision that will define the rest of his life. Sometimes you have to act on incomplete information, trusting that doing something is better than doing nothing. The parking structure's roof rushes toward him, its concrete surface appearing solid and welcoming after the nightmare of the hospital. Marcus releases the cable at what he hopes is the right moment, tucking into a roll that sends him tumbling across the gravel-covered roof. Pain shoots through his shoulder and ribs, but he's alive and free. For now, behind him, the hospital roof erupts in activity as Harrison coordinates his next move. Marcus sees additional figures emerging from other roof access points. This conspiracy has more personnel than he'd imagined, suggesting an operation far more extensive than anything Dr. Chun had documented. Marcus picks himself up and runs toward the parking structure's stairwell, his phone already dialing the one person he trusts absolutely: Dr. Elena Vasquez, his former professor and current head of emergency medicine at City General Hospital. If anyone will believe his story and have the authority to act on it, it's Elena. The phone rings once, twice. On the third ring, Elena's familiar voice answers, thick with sleep. Marcus? It's 4 a.m. What's wrong? Elena, I need you to listen very carefully. Marcus pants as he descends the parking structure stairs. I'm at Mercy General, and I've uncovered evidence of a human trafficking ring operating inside the hospital. They're using patient records to target vulnerable people, and they've been doing it for at least 30 years. Silence on the other end of the line. Then Elena's voice, sharper now, fully awake. Marcus, where are you exactly? Are you safe? For the moment, but Elena, there's something else. I think this isn't just happening at Mercy General. I think there's a network of hospitals involved, maybe across multiple cities. The evidence suggests. The line goes dead. Marcus stares at his phone, realizing with growing dread that Harrison's reach might extend further than he'd imagined. If the conspiracy includes connections in city government and law enforcement, it might also have penetrated other medical institutions. Marcus reaches the parking structure's ground level and emerges onto the street, where the pre-dawn darkness provides temporary cover. But as he looks back at Mercy General, he sees something that makes his blood freeze. Vehicles moving through the hospital complex, their headlights coordinated like a military operation. Harrison isn't just trying to recapture one escaped witness. He's mobilizing resources for something much larger, something that suggests Marcus has stumbled into the middle of an operation that's been years in the planning. And somewhere in the city, 12 vulnerable patients are scheduled for discharge in the next 48 hours, unaware they've been marked for a fate worse than the abuse they're trying to escape. Marcus crouches behind a parked van, watching the coordinated movement of vehicles around Mercy General. The operation is too smooth, too professional to be improvised. Harrison's people move with the precision of a well-rehearsed plan, suggesting they've dealt with security breaches before. His phone buzzes with a text message from an unknown number. Dr. Vasquez is safe, but monitored. Trust no one at City. General, meet me at the Riverside Diner on Oak Street. Come alone. A friend of Sarah Chun. Marcus stares at the message, his mind racing. Someone else knows about Dr. Chun's investigation, someone who's been watching the situation unfold. But the timing feels too convenient, too perfectly aligned with his escape from the hospital. Still, with Harrison's network actively hunting him and his usual support systems compromised, Marcus has few options. He deletes the message and begins making his way through the pre-dawn streets toward Oak Street, staying in shadows and avoiding the main thoroughfares. The city feels different in these early hours, quieter, more dangerous. Every passing car could be part of Harrison's search grid. Every pedestrian a potential spotter. Marcus keeps Dr. Chun's journal pressed against his chest, acutely aware that the papers in his jacket might be the only evidence capable of exposing a conspiracy that spans decades. The Riverside Diner sits on a corner that's seen better days, its neon sign flickering intermittently and casting pink shadows on the empty sidewalk. Through the windows, Marcus sees only one customer, a woman in her 50s sitting in a back booth, nursing a cup of coffee and reading what appears to be a medical journal. Marcus enters the diner, the bell above the door announcing his arrival with a cheerful chime that feels absurd given the circumstances. The woman looks up, and Marcus recognizes her immediately despite the 31 years that have passed since her hospital photograph was taken. It's Dr. Sarah Chun. Sit down, Marcus, she says quietly, gesturing to the seat across from her. We have a lot to discuss, and not much time. Marcus slides into the booth, his world tilting off its axis. You're supposed to be dead. Missing. For 31 years. I saw your grave marker at the cemetery. Sarah Chun smiles sadly, her fingers wrapped around the coffee cup for warmth. I've been many things over the past 3 decades, but dead isn't one of them. Though there have been times I've wished it were simpler. She's older, obviously, with silver threading through her black hair and lines around her eyes that speak of years spent looking over her shoulder. But her gaze remains sharp, intelligent, and filled with a determination that Marcus recognizes from her journal entries. The night I disappeared, Sarah continues, I had just finished copying the evidence you found tonight. I knew Harrison was closing in. I'd seen the signs. The way my access to certain records was being quietly restricted. The subtle changes in staff scheduling that kept me isolated. Marcus pulls out the journal and x-rays, placing them on the table between them. This evidence, it's real? All of it? Every word. But Marcus, what you found is just the beginning. Harrison's operation at Mercy General is one node in a network that spans hundreds of hospitals across the country. They call it the Harvest Protocol. The name sends a chill through Marcus. Harvest Protocol? A systematic approach to identifying and acquiring vulnerable populations for various forms of exploitation. Organ trafficking is just one component. There's also labor trafficking, sexual exploitation, medical experimentation, any market that requires a steady supply of people who won't be missed. Sarah reaches into her purse and withdraws a tablet, its screen showing a map of the United States, dotted with hundreds of red markers. Each dot represents a medical facility that's been infiltrated or compromised. The network uses legitimate medical infrastructure as cover for what amounts to industrial-scale human trafficking. Marcus studies the map, overwhelmed by the scope of what he's seeing. How is this possible? How has it stayed hidden for so long? Because it hides in plain sight, Sarah explains. Vulnerable patients disappear from hospitals, everyday runaways, overdose victims, people with mental health crises. The system is designed to lose track of certain populations. The Harvest Protocol simply weaponizes that existing dysfunction. She taps the screen, zooming in on their region. Mercy General processes approximately 50 targets per year. City General, where your friend Dr. Vasquez works, handles twice that number. Regional Medical Center downtown has quotas that would horrify you. Elena's hospital is involved. Marcus feels sick, but she's the one I called for help. Dr. Vasquez is clean, as far as I know. But her hospital isn't. The network doesn't require everyone to be complicit. They just need key people in administrative positions and enough compromised staff to maintain operational security. Sarah slides a manila folder across the table. These are the current target lists for all 3 facilities. The patients you saw identified at Mercy General are scheduled for processing within the next week, but they're not the only ones at risk. Marcus opens the folder and finds himself looking at patient profiles from multiple hospitals, dozens of faces, names, and medical histories. Men, women, children, elderly patients, all sharing the common thread of vulnerability and social isolation. There are children on this list, Marcus whispers, his hands shaking as he flips through the pages. The juvenile targets are the most valuable, Sarah confirms, her voice heavy with grief. A healthy child can generate millions in revenue across multiple markets. The network has specialized teams that handle pediatric acquisitions. Marcus pushes the folder away, overwhelmed by the magnitude of evil he's uncovered. Why are you telling me this? Why didn't you go to the authorities 31 years ago? Sarah laughs bitterly. You think I didn't try? The Harvest Protocol has connections in law enforcement, city government, federal agencies. Every time I thought I'd found someone clean, someone who could help, the information somehow made its way back to Harrison's people. So you've been hiding for 3 decades? Not hiding, fighting. I've spent 31 years documenting their operations, identifying their personnel, mapping their network. I've saved who I could, when I could, but always carefully, always invisibly. Because the moment they confirm I'm alive, I become a liability they can't tolerate. Sarah reaches across the table and grasps Marcus's hand. But tonight, you changed everything. By accessing that archive room, by triggering their security protocols, you forced them into the open. They can't operate in shadows anymore. Not with a witness who's seen their infrastructure and stolen their documentation. That doesn't sound like a good thing for my life expectancy. It's not. But it's an opportunity we've never had before. For the first time in 3 decades, they're exposed, scrambling, making mistakes. If we move quickly and carefully, we might be able to bring down the entire network. Marcus stares at the woman across from him, trying to process the impossibility of the situation. What do you need me to do? Help me save those 12 patients from Mercy General. But more than that, help me expose the Harvest Protocol before they can disappear again. Tonight's events have put them on high alert, but it's also disrupted their operational timeline. If we can document their emergency protocols, their backup systems, their crisis management procedures, we might gather enough evidence to convince someone in authority to act. And if we can't, Sarah's expression darkens. Then by this time, next week, 12 more people will have vanished without a trace, and Harrison's network will have adapted their security measures to ensure this never happens again. Outside the diner, Marcus notices headlights moving slowly down Oak Street, vehicles cruising in a search pattern rather than normal traffic. The net is closing again. They found us, Marcus says. Sarah follows his gaze and nods grimly. Sooner than I expected. They must have been monitoring cellular traffic, tracking your phone's location. She stands quickly, leaving money on the table. There's a back exit through the kitchen. My car is parked in the alley behind the building. As they move toward the rear of the diner, Sarah adds quietly, Marcus, once we leave here, there's no going back to your normal life. The network will never stop hunting you, and everyone you care about becomes a potential target. Are you sure you want to do this? Marcus thinks about the faces in the patient files, about Dr. Chun's 31 years of solitary fighting, About the 12 people scheduled for processing in the coming days. The choice feels less like a decision than a recognition of who he already is. Let's go save some lives, he says. Sarah's car is a nondescript Honda Civic that looks like it belongs to any middle-aged professional. But Marcus notices the modifications as they drive through the pre-dawn streets. Tinted windows, reinforced door panels, and what appears to be a sophisticated communications array hidden beneath the dashboard. I've been preparing for this moment for 3 decades, Sarah explains, navigating through a maze of side streets with practiced efficiency. The car, the safe houses, the documentation, everything designed for the day when stealth would no longer be an option. She hands Marcus a secure phone, its screen showing encrypted messaging apps he's never seen before. Your old phone is compromised. They're tracking it, monitoring your calls, probably listening to every conversation. This one uses military-grade encryption and routes through servers they can't access. Marcus powers down his personal phone and slips it into his pocket. Where are we going? To gather the others. Others? Sarah glances at him in the rearview mirror. You didn't think I was working alone, did you? 31 years is a long time to spend in isolation. I've found allies over the years, people who've lost loved ones to the network, medical professionals who've noticed the patterns, law enforcement officers who've seen too many cases go cold for convenient reasons. They pull into the parking lot of a 24-hour storage facility on the outskirts of the city. Sarah leads Marcus to Unit 47B, where she enters a complex code into an electronic lock. The metal door rolls up to reveal not stored furniture or forgotten belongings, but a sophisticated command center. Multiple computer monitors line one wall, displaying real-time feeds from security cameras positioned around various hospitals and medical facilities. A second wall is covered with photographs, documents, and timeline charts that map the Harvest Protocol's operations across multiple states and decades. The scope is staggering: hundreds of missing persons cases, thousands of documented disappearances, all connected by invisible threads that only become visible when viewed from this comprehensive perspective. My God, Marcus whispers, taking in the years of accumulated evidence. How many people know about this? 6 of us, a voice says from the shadows. Marcus turns to see a man in his 40s emerging from behind a bank of computer equipment. Detective Ray Sullivan, formerly of the Metro Police Department. I was forced into early retirement when I got too close to identifying the network's law enforcement connections. Sarah makes introductions as 2 more figures step into the light. Dr. Amanda Torres, pediatric surgeon at Regional Medical Center. She's been documenting the suspicious disappearances of juvenile patients for the past 8 years. And Janet Morrison, whose daughter vanished from City General's psychiatric ward 7 years ago. Janet Morrison looks like any suburban mother, but her eyes hold the haunted quality Marcus recognizes from the families of missing persons. Emma was admitted for evaluation after a suicide attempt, she explains quietly. 3 days later, the hospital claims she'd walked out during a shift change. No security footage, no witness statements, no trace of where she'd gone. The pattern repeats across all their facilities, Dr. Torres adds. Vulnerable patients experiencing crisis. Events, minimal family oversight, bureaucratic confusion that creates just enough chaos to mask deliberate acquisition. Detective Sullivan moves to the computer array and begins pulling up files. What Marcus discovered tonight confirms something we've suspected for months. The network is accelerating their operations. The target lists are longer, the acquisition timelines shorter, the risks they're willing to take more extreme. Why the acceleration? Marcus asks. Because they know we're getting close, Sarah replies. The evidence Marcus extracted from the archive gives us documentation they never intended anyone to see. Personnel lists, operational protocols, financial. Records everything needed to prove the conspiracy exists. Dr. Torres points to one of the monitors, which shows a live feed from Regional Medical Center's emergency department. More importantly, it gives us the ability to predict their next moves. The 12 patients from Mercy General aren't the only targets scheduled for this week. The screen displays a coordinated schedule across all 3 major hospitals in the city. Over the next 5 days, 47 patients meeting the vulnerability profile are scheduled for discharge or transfer. Based on the network's historical patterns, at least half of them will never make it to their intended destinations. We can't save all of them, Sullivan admits grimly. The network has too many resources, too many people in positions of authority. But if we can document the abduction process, gather real-time evidence of their operations, we might be able to build a case that even their compromised allies can't suppress. Sarah moves to a wall-mounted map showing the city's medical facilities. The key is the central coordination point. All 3 hospitals feed their targets into a common processing system before distribution to end buyers. If we can identify that facility and document its operations, we can prove the conspiracy exists on a scale that demands federal intervention. Do we know where the coordination point is? Marcus asks. We have suspicions, Janet Morrison replies, her voice tight with controlled anger. There's an abandoned pharmaceutical facility on the industrial side of town, Meridian Labs. It was shut down 15 years ago for FDA violations, but the property was purchased by a holding company with ties to medical equipment suppliers. Sullivan pulls up satellite imagery of the facility. No official activity, but we've documented regular truck traffic, personnel movement, and what appears to be significant power consumption for a supposedly empty building. Marcus studies the images, noting the facility's isolation and defensible position. You want to infiltrate an active trafficking operation with 6 people. Not infiltrate, Sarah corrects. Document. The network's primary vulnerability is their reliance on legitimacy. They depend on their medical credentials and institutional authority to operate undetected. If we can gather video evidence of their operations, broadcast it widely enough, they lose the cover that makes everything possible. Dr. Torres activates another monitor, showing news feeds from multiple media outlets. We've already begun the exposure process. The evidence Marcus photographed tonight has been anonymously transmitted to investigative journalists, federal agencies, and medical oversight boards, but without corroborating evidence, without real-time documentation of active operations. They can dismiss it as conspiracy theories or fabricated materials. The network has survived exposure attempts before, Sullivan adds. They have crisis management protocols, media manipulation capabilities, and enough legitimate political connections to weather most storms. We need something undeniable evidence so comprehensive and compelling that it can't be suppressed or explained away. Sarah opens a equipment case revealing sophisticated recording devices, communication gear, and what Marcus recognizes as tactical body armor. The plan is simple in concept, complex in execution. We position surveillance teams around the Meridian facility during tonight's processing window. If our intelligence is correct, they'll be bringing in targets from all 3 hospitals for preliminary sorting and shipment. Preliminary sorting? Marcus feels sick at the clinical terminology. Medical evaluation, market categorization, shipment preparation. Janet Morrison explains, her voice hollow. They treat human beings like inventory to be cataloged and distributed. Marcus looks around the storage unit at the accumulated evidence of decades of atrocities. The scale is overwhelming, the evil so systemic and entrenched that exposing. It feels like trying to drain an ocean with a teacup. But then he thinks about Maria Santos, scheduled for discharge tomorrow morning. About Robert Kim and Jennifer Walsh and the 9 other patients whose names he'd seen on Harrison's target list. About Dr. Chun's 31 years of solitary fighting and Janet Morrison's 7 years of searching for her missing daughter. What do you need me to do? Marcus asks. Sarah closes the equipment case and meets his eyes. "Help us get inside." "Inside the facility? I thought you said we were just documenting from outside." "External surveillance will only show us vehicles and personnel movement," Sullivan explains. "To prove what's happening inside, to gather evidence that will stand up in court and compel law enforcement action, we need someone on the inside who can document the actual processing operations." Dr. Torres pulls up architectural plans for the Meridian facility. The building has multiple access points, but they're all monitored and secured. However, there's a medical waste disposal system that connects to the city's hazmat processing network. Someone with medical credentials and knowledge of waste handling protocols could potentially gain access through that system. Marcus stares at the plans, realizing what they're asking him to do. "You want me to crawl through a medical waste system into an active human trafficking facility?" "It's the only way," Sarah says quietly. "The network has adapted to every other approach we've tried. But they won't expect someone to infiltrate through their waste disposal infrastructure." "And if I'm caught?" The question hangs in the air, unanswered. Finally, Janet Morrison speaks. "Then at least someone will know what happened to you." Which is more than the families of their victims ever get. Outside the storage unit, the sun is beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that feel obscenely beautiful given the darkness they're planning to confront. Marcus realizes that in a few hours, he'll either be documenting evidence that could save dozens of lives, or he'll become another statistic in the network's long history of making inconvenient people disappear. "When do we start?" he asks. The sun sets behind the industrial skyline as Marcus approaches the Meridian Labs facility through a maze of abandoned warehouses and rusted infrastructure. The hazmat suit Sarah provided is uncomfortable and claustrophobic, but it's his only chance of reaching the building's interior undetected. The medical waste disposal access point sits behind a chain-link fence topped with razor wire, but Detective Sullivan's lockpicking skills have cleared the path. Marcus carries a waterproof camera disguised as standard safety equipment, along with communication gear that will allow the surveillance team to monitor his progress. "Remember," Sarah's voice crackles through his earpiece, "you're looking for 3 things. Documentation of the sorting process, evidence of coordination between multiple hospitals, and any records that show the scope of their distribution network." Marcus nods, though he knows she can't see him from her position half a mile away. The waste disposal tunnel yawns before him like the mouth of some mechanical beast, its steel-lined interior disappearing into darkness. "I'm going in," Marcus whispers into his microphone. The tunnel is exactly as miserable as he'd anticipated: narrow, humid, and filled with the lingering chemical odors of medical waste processing. But it's also cleaner than he'd expected, suggesting the facility maintains its disposal systems even while officially abandoned. After 20 minutes of crawling through the tunnel, Marcus reaches a junction where the passage splits in 3 directions. The architectural plans had indicated this decision point, but they hadn't shown which path led to the main building's interior. Marcus chooses the center tunnel, reasoning that it's most likely to lead toward the facility's core operations. The passage begins to slope upward, and he can hear mechanical sounds growing louder: ventilation systems, hydraulic equipment, and something that might be vehicle engines. The tunnel terminates at a grated opening that provides a view into what appears to be a loading dock. Marcus peers through the metal slats and feels his stomach drop at what he sees. The abandoned facility is fully operational. Multiple delivery trucks are parked in the loading bay, their rear doors open to reveal modified interiors lined with medical equipment. Personnel in scrubs move between the vehicles, checking clipboards and coordinating the transfer of what Marcus initially mistakes for medical supplies. Then he realizes the supplies are people. Patients on gurneys are being wheeled from the trucks into the facility, most appearing unconscious or heavily sedated. Marcus recognizes several faces from the target lists, including Maria Santos, the young mother he'd treated just days ago at Mercy General. "Sarah," Marcus whispers into his microphone, "they're here. The patients from tonight's lists. They're all here. How many?" Sarah's voice is tense. Marcus counts quickly, his hands shaking as he documents the scene with his hidden camera. "At least 20 visible, probably more inside the trucks I can't see into." "Can you identify any of the personnel?" Marcus focuses on the figures in scrubs, looking for familiar faces. Most are strangers, but he recognizes one man directing the unloading process, Dr. Alan Rodriguez, who works the emergency department at City General. Someone Marcus had considered a colleague, possibly even a friend. "Rodriguez from City General is here," Marcus reports, feeling sick. He's coordinating the intake process. Through his earpiece, Marcus hears Sullivan's voice. "Rodriguez was on our suspect list. His department has the highest rate of unexplained patient disappearances in the city." Marcus watches as the gurneys are wheeled into the facility's interior, disappearing through a set of double doors marked "Processing Authorized Personnel Only." If he's going to gather evidence of what happens next, he needs to find a way inside. The grate covering his tunnel access is secured with standard industrial bolts, but Marcus has been carrying the multi-tool since his construction crew days. Working as quietly as possible, he loosens the bolts and creates a gap large enough to squeeze through. The loading dock is temporarily empty, the last of the trucks having finished their deliveries. Marcus drops into the space and immediately feels exposed. The facility's lighting is bright and comprehensive, designed to eliminate shadows where someone might hide. He moves quickly toward the processing doors, staying low and using the parked trucks for cover. As he approaches the entrance, he can hear voices from inside clinical discussions that sound disturbingly similar to normal medical consultations. Patient 347 shows signs of malnutrition, but organ function appears normal. Category B processing, shipment priority medium. Patient 351 has extensive surgical history. Recommended for Category D, research applications only. Marcus pushes through the doors and finds himself in a medical facility that rivals any legitimate hospital. The processing area is divided into multiple examination bays, each equipped with advanced diagnostic equipment and monitoring systems. But instead of treating patients, the staff is cataloging them like inventory. Marcus hides behind a bank of equipment and activates his camera, documenting everything he can see. The patients are subjected to comprehensive medical examinations, blood work, imaging studies, genetic testing, all designed to determine their market value rather than their medical needs. At one examination station, Marcus sees Jennifer Walsh, the college student from Mercy General's target list. She's conscious, but clearly drugged, her eyes unfocused as a technician draws multiple vials of blood. "Jennifer," Marcus whispers, barely audible. Her head turns slightly toward his voice, and for a moment their eyes meet. He sees recognition flicker across her features, followed by hope and terror in equal measure. Marcus wants to help her immediately, but he forces himself to remain hidden and continue documenting. Saving one person won't stop the system, but gathering evidence might save hundreds. He moves deeper into the facility, following corridors that lead to what appears to be the administrative center. Through an open doorway, he sees Harrison seated at a conference table with several other figures, including Dr. Rodriguez and a woman Marcus doesn't recognize. "The security breach at Mercy General has accelerated our timeline," Harrison is saying. "We need to process this batch and initiate immediate distribution. The longer we hold inventory, the greater our exposure risk." The unknown woman consults a tablet. European buyers are requesting expedited delivery. They're willing to pay premium rates for immediate shipment, especially for the pediatric acquisitions. Marcus's blood runs cold as he realizes they're discussing children. His camera continues recording as the meeting progresses, capturing Faces, voices, and explicit discussion of human trafficking operations. What about the web situation? Dr. Rodriguez asks. He's still unaccounted for, and he has access to documentation that could compromise multiple facilities. Webb is a temporary problem, Harrison replies. Our contacts in law enforcement are coordinating a manhunt. Once he's neutralized, we can return to normal operations. And if he's already shared the information? Then we activate the Lazarus protocol. The unfamiliar term sends a chill through Marcus. The woman at the table opens a different file on her tablet, and Marcus can see organizational charts that appear to show backup facilities in multiple states. Lazarus protocol assumes total exposure of current operations, she explains. We would shut down all existing facilities, eliminate any compromised personnel, and relocate core operations to the secondary network. Financial losses would be significant, but the infrastructure would survive. How many personnel would need to be eliminated? Harrison asks the question casually, as if discussing routine maintenance. Approximately 200 across all facilities. Anyone with detailed knowledge of operations who might become a liability during investigation. Marcus realizes with growing horror that he's not just documenting a trafficking ring he's uncovered. A conspiracy prepared to commit mass murder to protect itself. The personnel elimination wouldn't be limited to criminals. It would include anyone who might serve as a witness, possibly including legitimate medical staff who've noticed suspicious patterns. Begin Lazarus preparations, Harrison decides. If Webb surfaces with credible evidence, we implement immediately. The meeting begins to break up, and Marcus realizes he needs to escape before the corridors fill with personnel. But as he turns to retrace his path, he comes face to face with a security guard who'd been making rounds. Hey, the guard shouts, reaching for his radio. Unauthorized personnel in processing. Marcus runs, his heart pounding as alarms begin. Blaring throughout the facility. Behind him, he hears shouts and the sound of multiple people pursuing him. The loading dock seems impossibly far away, and he realizes the route he'd used to enter the building is now blocked by security personnel. Sarah! Marcus gasps into his microphone as he flees through the corridors. I'm blown. They're activating something called Lazarus Protocol. They're planning to eliminate hundreds of people. Get out of there. Sarah's voice is urgent. We're coming to extract you. But as Marcus reaches a corridor junction, he sees armed security personnel blocking every exit route. The facility is in full lockdown, and he's trapped inside with evidence that could save hundreds of lives, if he can find a way to transmit it before the network silences him permanently. Marcus ducks into an equipment storage room as footsteps. Thunder passed in the corridor. The facility's lockdown protocols have transformed Meridian Labs into a fortress, but they've also revealed the true scope of the operation. Dozens of armed personnel emerge from hidden positions, suggesting a security force far larger than any legitimate medical facility would require. Lockdown Alpha initiated, a voice announces over the intercom system. All personnel report to stations. Initiate Lazarus Protocol authorization sequence. Marcus checks his recording equipment, confirming that everything he's documented is saved to multiple backup systems. The evidence includes Harrison's confession, organizational charts for the secondary network, and detailed footage of the processing operations. If he can transmit this data to Sarah's team, they'll have everything needed to expose the entire conspiracy. But the facility's communications jamming is blocking his attempts to upload the files. Marcus needs to find a hardwired internet connection or disable the jamming equipment. Through the storage room's small window, Marcus sees the loading dock transforming into a staging area for evacuation. Personnel are wheeling the unconscious patients back onto the trucks, preparing for immediate transport. Whatever the Lazarus Protocol entails, it's happening fast. Marcus slips out of the storage room and moves toward what the Architectural plans had indicated was the facility's communications center, if he can access their network infrastructure. He might be able to bypass the jamming and transmit his evidence. The communications center is 2 floors up, accessible through a service stairwell that runs parallel to the main corridors. Marcus begins climbing, using his medical knowledge to muffle his footsteps and control his breathing. The hazmat suit that had protected him in the waste tunnels now feels like a liability, bulky and noisy in the cramped stairwell. As he reaches the 2nd floor, Marcus hears voices from the communication center. Through a crack in the door, he sees technicians frantically working at computer terminals, their screens showing what appears to be a massive data deletion operation. Patient records purged from all 3 hospitals, one technician reports. Financial transactions cleaned, personnel files sanitized. No trace of Harvest Protocol operations in any official database. What about the backup facilities? Another voice asks. Secondary network is operational and standing by. Once we initiate the primary site destruction sequence, operations can resume within 72 hours. Primary site destruction. Marcus realizes they're not just planning to abandon Meridian Labs, they're going to destroy it, along with any evidence of what happened here. And probably anyone inside who might serve as a witness. Marcus waits for the right moment, then slips into the communications center while the technicians are focused on their screens. The room contains multiple server racks and network switching equipment, but more importantly, it has hardwired connections to external communications networks. Moving as quietly as possible, Marcus connects his recording device to one of the network terminals and begins uploading his evidence to every contact in Sarah's network. The files are large, and the upload process will take several minutes, time he probably doesn't have. Upload initiated, he whispers into his microphone, hoping some of his transmission reaches Sarah's team despite the jamming. Evidence is going out to all backup contacts. If I don't make it out, make sure the world sees what's on these files. One of the technicians turns around and spots Marcus at the terminal. Security to communications. We have a breach. Marcus draws on reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed, spinning away from the terminal as the technician lunges for him. The upload is only 50% complete, but Marcus has no choice but to run. He bursts through the communications center door and finds himself face to face with Harrison, who's ascending the stairwell with 2 armed security personnel. Dr. Marcus Webb, Harrison says, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. You've caused us considerable inconvenience. Just wait until you see what kind of inconvenience I've caused you. Marcus replies, backing up the stairs toward the facility's roof access. The evidence you think you've gathered won't save anyone, Harrison continues, following Marcus up the stairwell. We've been operating for over 30 years because we have contingencies for every scenario. Within hours, this facility will be nothing but rubble. All records will be sanitized, and operations will resume at locations you'll never find. Marcus reaches the roof access door and finds it locked. Behind him, Harrison and his security team are closing the distance rapidly. But I'm curious, Harrison adds, pausing on the stairs. What made you think you could stop something this large? One resident against an international network with resources and connections you can't even imagine? Marcus tries his multi-tool on the roof access lock, his hands shaking with adrenaline. Because sometimes one person willing to do the right thing is all it takes to bring down a house of cards. The lock gives way, and Marcus bursts onto the roof, just as Harrison's security team reaches the top of the stairwell. The pre-dawn sky is beginning to lighten, and Marcus can see the city spreading out below him, thousands of people going about their morning routines, unaware that a trafficking network has been operating in their midst for decades. But as Marcus looks around the roof, searching for escape routes, he sees something that fills him with hope. News helicopters circling the facility, their cameras trained on the building. Police vehicles are surrounding the perimeter, and what appears to be a federal tactical team is setting up equipment in the parking area. "Sarah," Marcus whispers into his microphone, "please tell me that's you down there." "The cavalry has arrived," Sarah's voice crackles through, clearer now that he's outside the facility's jamming range. "Your evidence uploads triggered automatic. Distribution to every law enforcement agency, news organization, and medical oversight board in our database." The story is already breaking on national news. Harrison emerges onto the roof, his face twisted with rage. "You have no idea what you've..." Whether the network's operations extended beyond the United States. "Extensive international connections," Marcus confirms. Evidence recovered from the facilities shows coordination with trafficking organizations in 17 countries, including specialized medical facilities that were providing organs, conducting unauthorized research, and facilitating various forms of exploitation. The international scope has triggered diplomatic investigations and cooperation agreements that are still unfolding. Marcus knows that investigators in Europe, Asia, and South America are conducting their own raids based on intelligence gathered from the Meridian facility. But for all the victories, Marcus also knows how much remains hidden. The Lazarus Protocol documents had referenced contingencies beyond the backup facility's deeper networks with even more sophisticated operational security. Harrison and his co-conspirators have provided limited cooperation, protecting assets and personnel that investigators haven't yet identified. One final question. Dr. Webb, what impact has this investigation had on the medical community's approach to patient safety and institutional oversight? Marcus thinks about the changes he's witnessed over the past 6 months. Hospitals nationwide have implemented new patient tracking systems, mandatory reporting protocols for suspicious disappearances, and background screening procedures that go far beyond previous standards. Medical schools are teaching courses on recognizing and preventing institutional exploitation. The medical community is learning that our obligation to do no harm extends beyond individual patient care. Marcus replies, "We have a responsibility to ensure that medical institutions themselves don't become instruments of harm. The protocols we're implementing now should make it much more difficult for networks like this to operate undetected." As the day's testimony concludes, Marcus steps down from the witness stand and joins Sarah in the courthouse corridor. The media attention has been overwhelming, but Marcus has learned to use it strategically. Every interview and public appearance is an opportunity to educate the public about trafficking warning signs and institutional vulnerabilities. "How are you holding up?" Sarah asks as they walk toward the exit. "Some days are harder than others," Marcus admits. "The nightmares are getting less frequent, but I still wake up thinking about the people we didn't save in time." "That feeling never completely goes away," Sarah says gently. "But it's what keeps us fighting. The guilt over who we couldn't help drives us to help who we can." Outside the courthouse, Marcus sees Detective Sullivan coordinating with federal agents who are preparing to testify in the next phase of trials. Dr. Torres is being interviewed by a medical journal about the pediatric safety protocols she's developed. Janet Morrison is speaking with families who've traveled from across the country, sharing resources and support strategies. The network they've built from their shared tragedy has grown into a national organization focused on prevention, victim support, and institutional reform. What began as 6 people in a storage unit has become a movement that's changing how medical institutions protect their most vulnerable patients. Marcus's secure phone buzzes with a message from Alana Vasquez, who's now heading a multi-hospital task force on trafficking prevention. 3 patients flagged by the new screening protocols at City General. All safe, families notified, potential traffickers in custody. The system is working. Similar messages arrive throughout the day, alerts from hospitals across the country where the new protocols are preventing abductions, identifying suspicious personnel, and protecting patients who might otherwise have disappeared without a trace. Ready to go home? Sarah asks, noting Marcus's exhaustion. Actually, Marcus says, checking his watch, I have one more stop to make. Marcus drives to Mercy General Hospital, where he's resumed his residency with a new focus on emergency medicine and trauma care. The hospital has undergone significant changes since Harrison's arrest. New administration, enhanced security protocols, and a patient advocacy program that ensures vulnerable individuals are never left unprotected. He stops by the room of a young woman admitted earlier that day for injuries consistent with domestic violence. Under the old system, she might have been identified as a potential target for trafficking. Under the new protocols, she's surrounded by social workers, victim advocates, and security personnel who are ensuring her safety. Dr. Webb, the patient asks as he checks her chart. Are you the doctor from the news? The one who exposed the trafficking ring? I'm just someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time, Marcus replies, adjusting her for and checking her vital signs. Thank you, she whispers. I know what you risk to help people like me. As Marcus completes his rounds and prepares to end his shift, he reflects on the strange path that led him from discovering mysterious X-rays to testifying in federal court. The evil he'd uncovered was more extensive and systematic than he'd ever imagined, but so was the capacity for ordinary people to fight back when they found the courage to act. The real victory isn't just the arrests and convictions, though those matter enormously. It's the transformation of systems that had been weaponized against the vulnerable. It's the thousands of medical professionals who now know what to look for and how to respond. It's the families who have their loved ones back and the potential victims who will never be targeted, because the networks that hunted them have been dismantled. Marcus checks his watch and realizes it's exactly 2:47 am, the same time he discovered the Copier printing Dr. Chun's X-rays 6 months ago. The symmetry feels meaningful, a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes begin with small acts of curiosity and courage. As he drives home through the quiet city streets, Marcus knows that the fight against networks like the Harvest Protocol will continue for years, maybe decades. But tonight, children are sleeping safely in their beds instead of being processed like inventory. Tonight, vulnerable patients are protected by systems designed to help rather than exploit them. And somewhere in the city, medical residents are beginning their night shifts, ready to heal rather than harm, to protect rather than predator. It's enough. For now, it's enough.